Where them Catholics at? Yeah. Yo, where them Catholics at? Man, what's the matter with these bishops?
Welcome back, everybody. It's the Catholic Convert Show, and we finally made it to the middle of the week, and it's almost over. You're not going to have to suffer through us much longer, at least until Monday, which is arguably the best day of the week. I pretty much enjoy Monday every single week for the last 5-6 years because I get to sit on my front porch and watch all my neighbors rush out to work, knowing that I don't have to.
Very nice.
So I always tell people when people at my parish, they listen to the show and they're like, man, you guys put out a lot of episodes. I've got my YouTube show that I do. I've got this that I do. I don't see how you put out so many episodes. I'm like, man, neither of us have real jobs. Like, that's the only reason that Ed and I are doing it. We don't have any real jobs, like Ed every now and then hits up an armored truck or gets a payout from his crew of the wise guys, and I type words on a screen.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's super easy, but it does give me a lot of free time. Ed, it gives you a lot of free time.
Oh yeah.
And I like to use my free time to annoy my wife. I do. I really do.
Yeah.
But it's not like I walk around like with my finger a few inches from her nose and it's like, I'm not touching you or anything like that. My kids do that to each other, especially in the back seat on long road trips. And it usually lasts for the entire duration.
Mm-hmm.
But no, my wife and I, we're completely polar opposites. And I think that's good. If you dig into the old cliche, opposites attract. But with Melissa, I'm a very outdoorsy kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
She's a very indoorsy kind of girl. Now, when I say, hey, let's go camping, my idea of camping is I might bring a tent and I might not. It might just be, hey, we can find a tree to lean up against and go to sleep kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or, okay, it's probably going to rain. We'll bring a tent, a sleeping bag, and, a backpack with like 12 pounds of beef jerky. And that's how we're going to survive for the 3 days we're out there. My wife, she's like, oh, we're going camping. Which cabin are we renting? But, the differences are just there. Either it's TV shows, too.
Yeah.
I hate to admit it because, look, everybody wants to joke and laugh about this, but I have to admit that my wife is a sucker for those trash TV housewife shows.
Oh.
And I cannot be in the same room if it's playing, simply because I don't like listening to people argue and fight. And there's been plenty of times I'm not endorsing this, but sometimes my immediate reaction is, I wish their husbands would take their privileges away. Like, but my wife likes regular other TV shows too. She's a typical chick. She likes the those true crime documentaries, because who doesn't? It's every woman's thing. I'm still convinced that she's using that as primarily a resource and intelligence gathering campaign on how she's going to end me one day and not get caught, which that's fair. I've put her through a lot these last 20 years, and I don't know if she can mentally handle another 20. So
Mm-hmm.
I get it. And then, she likes the regular, not sitcom, but long running shows. A couple of them that we like, she's big into some of the same TV shows that I like, like The Sopranos or, I don't know, Justified, The Shield, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some that she just doesn't like. And I get it, but I don't get it because they're fun, which are these historical fictions. It's very loosely, and I say loosely with a giant, like 143-inch font, loosely based
Mhm.
on real characters. One of my favorites, and it's a shame that it didn't get a third season, is it's called Nightfall. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it takes place, like the opening episode takes place in Acre, in the Holy Land during the Crusades, when
Mhm.
Acre fell to the Saracens. And it follows this guy named Landry, who's a Templar. And the whole point of the show, like the basic premise of the show, is like it time jumps 15 years after the fall of Acre, and
Mhm.
the Templars are in the temple in Paris. You know, King Philip is there. It's just what 1 or 2 years prior to, I think it's 3 years. I think it's like 1304. So it's like 3 years prior to the fall of the Templar Knights.
Mhm.
Um, and they're searching for the Holy Grail that was smuggled out of the Holy Land and then supposedly lost for the 15 years because it sank on a ship off the coast when it was hit by a trebuchet.
Mhm.
Right. And so, oh, it's lost forever. It's at the bottom of the sea, that kind of thing. But turns out it wasn't. And it's like this, it ties in the quest of this Templar who becomes the temple master to find the Grail, protect the Grail, at the same time navigate the political complexities that are going on with uh, Pope Boniface and the king, and also the completely fictitious nature that the main character Landry got King Philip's wife Joan pregnant
Mhm.
and with an affair, and he ends up he's like, I'm gonna have a daughter with this woman, right?
Wow.
And I'm not gonna spoil it for people who haven't watched it, but it's none of it is like remotely factually based on actual historical accounts, except for, we know in 1307 the Knights Templar were arrested, tortured, persecuted. Jacques de Molay was burned at the stake, the whole thing. We know all of that happened. We know there was a king named Philip. We know there was a pope named Boniface. That's as far as it goes with historical accuracy. But it's a great show, and it was on the History Channel for a while, so you could probably find the old episodes. I bought, just because I don't like streaming things and having to wait through ads. I bought the first and second season outright on Amazon. So I can stream them, but there's no ads because I purchased them. But it got me thinking of some of the cooler stories in Catholic history. And I mean, everybody knows the super cool story of Pope Boniface or Saint Boniface, right? Um, the old chopping down Donner's Oak, obviously cool. Now, this Pope Boniface is not the same Boniface. It makes you kind of wonder about if everybody was named Mary, obviously there was going to be more than one Boniface, you know, in the Bible. But Pope Boniface VIII was probably what I would consider a very based pope.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously, we all know that there's a little less than 24 popes that were not all that great, right? And that's putting it lightly when we look at it. But Pope Boniface VIII, he was born in Benedetto Cittani in 1235 in the Papal States that Ed is so fond of. And some very unusual circumstances that led to his rise to the papacy. Basically, it was the unexpected resignation of Celestine V, who had been elected in 1294.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a former hermit. He was a mystic, and he found that the challenges or complexities of being the Pope, they were a little overwhelming. So he just said, okay, this ain't for me. Now, Boniface VIII, he was a diplomat. He was a very experienced, he was a legal scholar, and he was chosen to replace him. But now there was obviously some controversial elements to his election and his rise. You know, he had been a cardinal, and he did have some experience with the papal administration.
Mhm.
But what his papacy was most marked by was his vigor in him trying to not only restore but expand papal authority with what he was seeing and the world was seeing as this growing secular power, right? And he kind of butted up against King Philip IV a few times. And basically, if anybody knows anything about church history and monarchies, they didn't want to bow to the Pope. There's a famous one that that unless you've actually studied it directly, you wouldn't have heard of the guy. But there was this one guy named King Henry VIII. And he was one of those that didn't want to bow to Rome. Very little known character in history. Very obscure.
First time hearing of it.
First you're hearing of it. Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, he sent out numerous papal bulls, including the Unum Sanctum, which declared the papal authority to, it declared the papal authority to be supreme over all these different papal authority, all these other secular authorities, excuse me. And he did assert that it was necessary for the salvation of every single human being to be subject to the Roman pontiff. And while that may seem a bold declaration, the man's not wrong.
No.
However, it did tick off King Philip IV of France. And he was already at odds with the papacy because taxation, clerical privileges, and basically what it was the taxes from the churches and the monasteries and all those things. It's kind of the same thing that happened in England. They were not going to the king. They were going to the church. And so that led to King Philip always being over here like at odds with, is he going to be at war with Catalonia? Is he going to be at war with England? Is he already still broke from his campaign against the Finnish? Excuse me. All these things. And so, of course, he's borrowing a ton of money from the Templars. And everybody loves that legend about the Templar treasure. I doubt it's on Oak Island, no matter how much the History Channel wants to keep seasons.
Yeah.
I very much doubt it's there. But back to King Philip. He was very shrewd. His nickname was Philip the Fair. And it wasn't because he was actually fair. It's because he lacked testosterone and couldn't grow a beard. You know, he was baby-faced. He looked very feminine. And, you know, he saw a lot of significant reforms and attempts to centralize the authority that he had. But that's what caused the fight with the papacy. And he wanted to tax the French clergy to support his military campaigns that I just mentioned, including the unsuccessful wars against England. Now, Pope Boniface VIII, he's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. You're not going to levy taxes on the clergy, and there's church privileges, and you're kind of brushing up on my authority as Pope, so that this can't happen. And it still didn't stop Philip from saying, oh, hey, Templar folks, you mind giving me a loan that he never actually paid back? The debt just kept racking up, right? I mean, it just never stopped happening. Now, what most people aren't aware of, and I believe we might have talked about this before, but at one point, I think actually you talked about this, but the confrontation between Philip and Boniface did reach a bit of a climax in 1303.
Mhm.
Philip wanted to have dominance over the papacy and undermine Boniface's authority. There was a group of French troops that were dispatched to Anagni, and Anagni, probably how it's pronounced. It's a town near Rome where Boniface was living. And the French forces, who were led by this guy named Guillaume de Nogaret and some other key agents, they entered on September 7th, and they seized control of the town, and they took Boniface VIII captive.
Mm-hmm.
And it was part of this big, broad strategy to, weaken the papal office, show that Philip was the boss of himself and the church couldn't tell him what to do because you're not my real dad kind of thing. And Pope Boniface was pretty much robbed because they ransacked his entire residence, and he was subjected to humiliation, verbal abuse, and he was confined for a few days, but he was eventually released. And it didn't help at all with how he had been portraying himself as, I'm the Pope, I'm the vicar of Christ on earth, I have the authority. Well, he didn't look like he had much authority after that. It was some trauma, some humiliation. It weakened him, but it also weakened his physical health, right? And it ultimately led to him dying. But again, during all of this, we have the Knights Templar over here. And they were established in, what was it, the 12th century by Hugh de Paynes. And it was pretty much their only job as this small group of knights was protecting Christian pilgrims that were on their way to or from the Holy Land. Because people would take offerings to the Holy Land. They would take their wealth. It's not like they could just put it in the bank and say, I'll be back. They didn't want to leave it under the mattress. So they would take a lot of their things with them because it wasn't like it was a quick trip. But obviously, through donations, land acquisitions, their involvement in giving loans and charging interest, they actually are credited with setting up the first banking system that modern banking kind of models after now. So that's kind of cool. But their network of all of these different temples were spread all over Europe. And so there was a lot more people, and they provided wealth, services, protection to all these different monarchs, all these different nobles. And they had this code where no matter what, we don't get involved in the politics of the city. We just protect people, and we loan money and collect rent or collect interest, right? But all that debt got racked up. King Philip of France said, yeah, I'm not paying this. So October 13th, which is why October the 13th is an unlucky number, King Philip orchestrated a sweeping and simultaneous arrest of all of the Templar members throughout France. Now, sadly, most of the Templars were in France. There was plenty in England. There was plenty in other outposts all throughout Spain and further out, even into the Holy Land. Excuse me. Italy, all these places. But there was a vast majority of them, including Jacques de Molay, who was the Grand Master, were all right there in France. And so the way it worked is King Philip issued secret orders that were supposed to all be executed and opened at the exact same time on the night of October the 12th. So he sent out riders. Everybody got all these orders and instructions. And then they all opened them that evening, read them all at the same time. So it was very much like an orchestrated raid. They had set up outside of all these Templar castles and places where the Templars had been staying. Went in, armed. It's like getting swatted in the middle of the night. Grabbed them, drug them out. And he charged them with a high degree of very serious crimes. Heresy, blasphemy, sexual misconduct. And I read through some of the charges that, they had secret rituals where they had to urinate on the cross or kiss other men or just all these weird things. Now, all of these charges were later revealed to be dubious and highly exaggerated. But what he wanted to do, because he was in so much debt, was exploit the allegations to justify his actions to seize the wealth.
Sure.
And obviously, these guys were tortured with brutal interrogation techniques. One of them was called the strappado, which what happens is they would tie you around your armpits, and then they would hoist you up in the air like a crane, and then release like a carnival ride, and then stop you, sudden stop, no gradual breaks at the bottom. There's something in the air. It's causing me to cough, so I apologize for that. But anyway, by this time we had Pope Clement V, and he had succeeded Boniface VIII. But he was under a lot of pressure from Philip, and he was very reluctant in the beginning to take action against the order, but he eventually yielded to the king's demands because the king was basically saying, oh, so you support all these heretics and you support these defamations against our Lord and da-da-da-da-da. So it eventually came out to where he joined in with King Philip. Now, it wasn't until 5 years later, in 1312, there was the Council of Vienna, which convened by Pope Clement V. He officially dissolved the Templar order. He declared all the Templars guilty of heresy, and the dissolution of the order led to pretty much it was the end of one of the most influential and powerful institutions of all of medieval Europe. Well, the medieval period, right? Now, the assets of the Templars were transferred over to the Knights Hospitaller. Obviously, not the ones that were seized by the king to cover his debts and finance his armies, of course. But for the most, if they didn't go into hiding, the remaining Templars were executed, imprisoned, or forced to confess, which then led to them being executed and or imprisoned. So it didn't really matter. It was quite a period. Now, when I hear all of this, and when I read all of this, and when I go through and because I love history, it reminds me of the document we saw the other day that apparently the U.S. government had a mole inside the Vatican that influenced papal election that brought about Vatican II.
Yeah, it's all that.
So it's once again history repeating itself. We had a world power not liking how strong and how devout people were to a certain Catholic faith and sought to undermine it. But rather than let's round up all the Catholics, they said, let's try to undermine it from within.
Yeah.
It was good old Bay of Pigs CIA kind of crap, because it was right around the same time as the Bay of Pigs. Well, about half a decade before. So now that we've seen that, how do you feel about turnabout being fair play, Ed? Maybe we should have the Vatican interfere with U.S. elections.
Whoa.
But seriously, isn't that what we're always accused of? At least
always
if you think back to if you think back to it in the mid to early 1900s, one of the biggest things that American non-Catholics had a problem with was Well, these Catholics are more loyal to Rome than they are to America.
As they should be.
As they should be. I'm much more loyal to Christ's church than I am a bed of degenerates.
Yeah.
So I guess that makes me, what's the word now? Weird, since that's what they want to call everyone now. But no, when I go and I see all these things through history, and obviously it's kind of almost prophetic when you look at that and you look at the way things are now with they weren't so much against the Catholic Church, but a very small group of Catholics, which were the Templar Knights.
Yeah.
And then you see the way that traditional Catholics, or even Catholics that just attend exclusively the Novus Ordo Mass, who still hold all of the same views and values of the rad trad TLM only guys. Because let's face it, there's some people that don't have the ability to drive 6.5 hours to go to a TLM parish or a fraternity parish. And so they have no choice but to avoid mortal sin of missing Mass and go to Mass at whatever parish is near. But it's this rampant return to traditionalism that is sweeping America. It's wrong. It's starting to sound like the same kind of propaganda crap that was laid about with the early 1900 Americans or mid 1900 Americans, or the 12th and 13th century French rattling against the Catholic, against the Templars. Now, it begs the question, why? Now, think about this.
Mm-hmm.
You never go after someone who is weak. There's no need to. You don't put considerable time and you don't put considerable effort into taking down the weakest of your enemies, or those you deem to be enemies. King Philip IV of France, Philip the Fair, was intimidated by the vast amount of power and wealth that had been accrued by the Templars. And he was like, yo, if they ever decide to come and collect all the money that I owe them, I'm done. And when they said, well, we're not going to give you any more because you haven't paid us back. Well, next thing you know, they're all heretics and they're all being arrested and tried and executed, burned at the stake.
Yeah.
When we started to see a rise of Catholicism in America over these last 10 years, with more and more people converting to the church, the anti-Catholic rhetoric took off again. Why?
Why?
You don't attack weak enemies. You don't attack things, and you don't come after people who don't pose a threat or a perceived threat, mind you, to the way you're living.
Yeah.
We've normalized debauchery. We've normalized depravity. We've normalized moral ambiguity and relativity. And so when you start to see more and more people taking hard stands and drawing lines in the proverbial sand, what else are you going to do but try to undermine them? That's the same thing going on with this really weird trend of calling anybody on the right, you guys are weird.
Weird, yeah.
You think it's weird that we don't rape kids? Cool. I'm proud to be weird.
It's weird to get married and have 3 or 4 kids, take them to church on Sunday. You know, those are all very off the wall.
Have morals. Have values.
Yeah.
Very
so bizarre. Bizarre way to.
Now, I'm not saying it's a conspiracy, but time and time again, there have been organized secular attacks against the church.
Of course there have.
It kind of reminds me of those atheists that get super mad at you when you refuse to not believe.
Yeah.
I'm like, you get mad at me for praying in public. You get mad at me for saying I get my values and my moral compass from the tenets of my faith. And you get mad about it because you don't believe in it. Well, why would you get mad about something you don't believe in?
Yeah.
It's the same thing because it threatens your way of life because you're not 100% sure that it isn't real. And as an atheist, you weren't always an atheist. You simply want to be right because either A, there's some sort of trauma from your childhood, which if that's the case, and I hope it isn't, but I do hope and pray you find peace for it, or you have some kind of chip on your shoulder about God and you're mad at him.
Yeah.
Those are the only atheists that exist, no matter who says otherwise.
I didn't get what I wanted, so obviously there is no God. And I like what you said, that people don't start out being atheists because they don't. And I get a lot of, anytime I mention this on social media, I get tons of pushback. But we are born with the knowledge of God and a desire to know and love
Absolutely.
Him. And people will say that's nonsense. Well, it's not nonsense. That is a fact. And some people have decided as they get older to suppress that knowledge, to suppress that desire, and then call themselves atheists or at a minimum agnostic. But that is, I'm sorry, we are created by God. We're created in his likeness and image. And so, yes, we are born with that knowledge of God, whether you agree with that. It's like, again, like you said so many times, you disagreeing with something doesn't mean that it's now not true, and that's something. And people who think that there are not these attacks on not just faiths, but strong faith. Like there are attacks on a Catholic. Nobody's attacking the Church of the risen Lord of Nazareth of Poughkeepsie, that has 18 congregants and was founded last week by Pastor Bob. Nobody's going after them because they don't have that strength and that conviction that the Catholic Church does. Listen, for those who think that I'm a conspiracy theorist or anything like that, I mean, it came out, remember, not that long ago, that the FBI actually had agents going into very strong, very traditional-minded Catholic churches to see what's going on, because that scares them. Having a packed Catholic church on a Sunday, these people might be starting to think, and they might be starting to have ideas. We can't have that. But so the FBI was putting people into churches to see what goes on. And it's crazy because the Catholic Church, better than any other church, really adheres to that whole not preaching about the government from the pulpit sort of thing. There are exceptions, of course. Father Altman saying you can't be a Democrat and be a Catholic. But for the
you can't be a Republican and be a Catholic either.
But yeah. But for the most part, I mean, that's about as far as any of them go. Nobody's going to stand up there and say, you have to vote for candidate A, you have to vote for candidate B. Now, a big part of that is because they know that somebody who's sitting there that day will make some phone calls, and then there will be trouble, and then the church has the potential of losing its, tax status and things like that. But there are a number of churches, and I've seen ever since Kamala Harris became the Democrats' candidate for the presidency, I've seen so many videos of little tiny churches across the country where the guy just gets up there and spends an hour telling them you have to vote for Kamala Harris. Nobody's going to come knocking on their door and say you're going to lose your tax exempt status or anything like that. Because these aren't really threats to the government or anything like that. They worry about the big boys on the block. They worry about the Catholic Church. They worry about, but there's another reason to that, is that, listen, a lot of people don't want to admit it, but they know that there's a lot of truth in the Catholic Church. They know there's a lot of truth in what the Catholic Church teaches. And that's why we've always been a target. You know what I'm saying? So this is not anything new. This is not anything that's going to end at any time soon. And you said again, look at what you attack the strong. You don't attack the weak. If you look at the different saints and other folks actually who have had run-ins with Satan and have been attacked ferociously by Satan, they're all very good, holy people. I mean, he's not going to go after the people he's already got. You know what I mean? He's got to go after the people that he doesn't have. And it's the same thing. Governments are afraid of the Catholic Church because they can't control the Catholic Church. You remember I spoke last week about the Cristero War in Mexico. What was the concern of President Calles back then in Mexico in 1920s and 1930s? He was afraid that the Catholic Church was going to have more power than he did. And so he had to attack and suppress the Catholic Church. And we see it time and time again throughout history. People see the Catholic Church as a rival, which is ridiculous, because we're not talking about. I mean, the Papal States have been gone since 1870. The Catholic Church is not looking to run the secular world. It wants to win hearts and minds and souls. It doesn't want to win property. It doesn't want to win territory. So it's a silly thing that they do. I mean, look at the Soviet Union. They knew that they couldn't defeat us mano a mano. And so what did? They infiltrated the United States with our education system, with our seminaries and things like that. They put weak-minded, I don't know if you'd say weak-minded, but people who agreed with them, people with socialist ideas, communist ideas, put them into the education system, put them into the seminaries and stuff, so that they could slowly kind of teach their way of life from the inside, because they knew they couldn't, in an actual physical battle, they couldn't defeat us. So this is going to go on and on and on and on. The church is always going to be attacked. But see, this is the other problem is that the people don't realize that you can attack the church all you want, but it's never going to go away, and you're never going to win. There's been a lot of times, and quite recently would be one of those times where the church has been very weakened. And I think we're starting to see that turnaround. You're seeing so many high-profile people convert to Catholicism. You're seeing even just the regular Joes on the street converting to Catholicism. You're seeing the popularity of the traditional Latin Mass, and I'm fine if you want to go Novus Ordo, you want to go to Latin Mass, you want to go to the liturgies of the Byzantine faith like I do. That's fine. I'm just saying that there's a reason that these things are becoming popular, and also look at the popularity with young people, with the Latin Mass, with adoration. People are starting to realize that a life without God in it is really no life at all, and that worries the powers that be. They don't want God to be more important to you than the government. And that's why they have a problem with it. They want to be top dog. They want to be in control. They want to be in charge. Why is our government?
It almost sounds like China.
It does, but you know what? But aren't some of those thoughts and concepts, aren't they shared universally? And like I said, people say, well, if you run for government and you're a Catholic, you have to leave that Catholicism at the door when you walk into your office. No. My faith is much more important than my role as a politician. And as a politician, if my faith isn't helping me to form a conscience and decisions and things that I'm making, then that's a problem. Because number one, it means I'm not really sold on my faith. I don't really believe my faith. If I truly believe that the rules that were instituted by Christ, that I've learned about through my Catholic faith, if I don't believe that those should be a part of the way we run our countries, then there's something wrong with me. Or there's, at least at the minimum, there's something very wrong with my faith. It's very weak. And think about it. If you had a government that was run with the same moral integrity that we are hopefully instilled with through our faith, things would be going a lot smoother than they are now, I think.
Well, you got me thinking about something here. When you were talking about, You're talking about, how the FBI had various agents posing as parishioners going into these Catholic churches. And it was primarily to see if, are they going to lose their tax exempt status because they're telling people how to vote? Almost every single mass at my parish, there is a reminder that abortion needs to be outlawed. And it is implied that if you're going to be involved in politics at all, and it's strongly implied, that you need to vote against abortion. Now, when you mentioned that example of, well, if they go into these other churches and they're saying, you got to vote for Kamala, they're not at risk for losing their tax status. It got me thinking about how, well, and I hate to say it, but how bastardized the concept of abortion has become. It is regarded as a political issue when it is not a political issue. It is an issue of morality. But now it's looked at as, oh, well, you're not politically left enough if you don't want abortion, or you're you're not politically right enough if you are okay with abortion. And they keep trying to assign it as a political issue. It is not a political issue. If you want abortion or don't want abortion to be banned, that doesn't relegate you to one or either side of the political aisle. It relegates you to moral or immoral. It's not a political issue. But they're trying to make it into one.
Our society has made it,
but it's never been one. It never will be one. Trying to pretend it is a charade of people on both sides of the political aisle of that. I mean, not on the moral issue of it. It is immoral. It is immoral. It is immoral. It is not right wing. It is not left wing. Morality is not right wing or left wing. And I think that's something that people have really forgotten. They think morality falls to the left or to the right. I'm sorry, but there's a Hawk Tuah girl that's being celebrated on the right. That's not moral.
Yeah.
And, we look at, we want moral conservatism, Okay, tell me why you've got, half naked girls at all of your events walking around in bikinis where the biggest piece of cloth is the how to wash tag in front of children. But you're also going to still complain when you see half naked people walking around at a pride rally. And I'm not telling you, everybody's got to dress like a friggin' Eskimo in Florida. But morality is not a political issue. Morality is a spiritual issue. It is not something that, well, we don't want abortion, so having naked girls in front of kids is fine. No, it's not. It's not even that hard to figure out and understand. But there's just this god-awful conflation of morality and politics that it's got people so sucked into the way they think about it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Your politics shouldn't dictate morals.
No,
your morality should be your morality should be above politics.
It should,
you should be able to tell someone on the right and on the left that they're wrong and they're committing, they're being immoral. Well, it's okay because they're on our side on other things.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you don't have to look, like we talked about before. I'm voting for Trump. You're voting for Trump. Is he 100% on board with banning abortion? No, he's not. But you know where he is? He's 100% on board with letting states make their own decision and the federal government not being able to override that. And that is halfway there.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
That
in
is,
some states
you know what? Yes, I'm fine with that, because here in South Carolina, we are this close to completely outlawing abortion completely.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of other states that have already outlawed it completely. And probably by the end of the next 2 years, there will be zero abortion in South Carolina, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Because one incumbent lost the seat and just got steamrolled. And I'm so happy about it.
Yeah.
But politics aside is where they should be. Aside. Morality first.
Yeah.
And stop giving people soft outs because, well, you know, they wear the elephant shirt. It's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
Moral issues are not political issues. The fact that people have tried to align them that way shows the disease that is rampant in society right now.
Yeah, but wouldn't you agree though that our laws should be driven by morality, but true morality, not morality is based on what I particularly believe in. And see, and this is the issue we get, because you'll have two candidates standing there, one pro-choice, one pro-life, and the pro-life guy will say, I'm taking the moral stand, and the pro-choice person will say, I'm taking the moral stand. And that guy across the aisle for me is a demon. He hates women. He hates, you know what I'm saying?
Here's what it should be. Here's what it should be. And this is why I can make it a little more clear.
Yeah.
When we talk about laws, what I envision this, and when I'm talking about it, I'm picturing things in 3 categories. Okay. In the first category, you have morality. The code of morality that is universal, whether you like it or agree with it or not, because it is universal.
Yeah.
If that applied to both sides had to adhere to it, which they do. And the political side of things we're voting on tax rates. We're voting on subsidization. We're voting on foreign trade policies and who's got the better one that is going to be in the best interest of our country. But we can't even talk about those things because the left and the right are arguing over morality. Common sense, simply moral issues is what they're arguing about. We don't even get a chance to see them debate about foreign economic policy and our trade policy, subsidization, or tax levies, or anything. You know, how are we going to get out of the trillions of dollars in debt? We can't even talk about that because people are complaining about the most simple common sense issues of morality that shouldn't even be something you have to vote on. It's just simply is. That's why we're screwed up right now as a nation, because people want to bitch and bicker about morality. And so nothing that actually makes people's lives better, that strengthens our country, fixes our economy, or, I don't know, makes it to the point where I don't have to spend $200 every time I leave the house. And what did you got? I got a pack of peanuts and a tank of gas. Because they're too busy arguing about morality. We have no idea who's going to do what best policy-wise, whether it becomes tax reform or, helping us fix, the housing market or infrastructural issues, where it shouldn't take 10 years to rebuild a bridge that took a section of a bridge to that when it only took 2 years to build the bridge itself.
Yeah.
Talking to you, Baltimore.
The president says that's going perfectly well. But here's the thing.
But you see my point.
No, I see your point, but this is the thing.
Morality is one thing. Politics are another. The politics of things are simply actual, fiscal, economical, and infrastructural policies. Democrats believe in we want to tax the rich, and the Republicans believe that we want to give tax breaks to the wealthy so they can bring more jobs.
Yeah.
Okay. Whoever agrees, vote on these issues. It shouldn't have to come down to a vote on whether murdering an innocent child is moral or not. When the hell would that ever be something you need to vote on? Is my point.
It shouldn't be. No, I get your point, because I'm old enough.
But I also understand the reality. I'm just saying, I'm pointing this out.
No, I know, because
this is the model we need to be working with, but we're not because people are like morons.
Very true. With the first 20 to 25 years that I was a voting person, anytime you saw a debate, you saw a commercial, you saw any of that stuff, it was simply about those things you were talking about. It was economic issues, it was foreign policy issues. That's what you saw, and so then it became much easier, I believe, to choose your candidate, because which candidate I think having them in office is going to benefit me as far as my pocketbook and things like that. Because at that point there was little argument about what was moral. And now they say you've got,
because it's universally understood.
Well, it's not. It should be. It should be universally understood. It was that way. But now you've got people that how can you look at look, we talk about abortion quite often on this show. And how can you look at something that is okay? There's a human life. Everyone agrees with that, and half the folks say it's okay to terminate that life if you feel the need to, and half the people say that there's under no circumstances do you have the authority to terminate that life. And both of them claiming the moral high ground. How can you have that? That doesn't make any sense to me. And there's another, euthanasia would be something that falls into that category. There's a half a dozen things we could rattle off very easily about that. So how do we get to this point as a society where you are actually having completely opposite thoughts, and both people thinking that they are completely in the moral majority there? And to me, it comes down to what role does God play in your life, and whether He plays a role at all. But to me it's that basic. But then it gets muddled too. I just watched a video this morning on Twitter of a Methodist pastor getting up there and just doing his Sunday thing and talking about how we need to preserve abortion rights, how they are a gift from God, how this and that and everything else. And I'm thinking, dude, you got to take that. You got to take that stole off and put it aside. Give it to someone who's earned it, who deserves it, because you're a moron. But this is where we've gotten to, is that we can't agree on what is moral, whereas 50 years ago there was
not exactly sure what just happened. Okay. Yeah. Ed, you got cut off and you froze up for a split second.
You know what?
The last thing I said, but this is where we've gotten
the FBI.
To. Let me guess. Let me guess. It's humid in Jersey, but no, it's the FBI. Got it.
No, it's the FBI, man. Anyway,
I completely get your. I completely get your point, and you see where I'm coming from on this.
Yeah.
Because when you mention the political ads used to be Al Gore voted no on relieving taxes for the middle class. George W. Bush tried to but he was blocked by the Democrats, and that's why you pay more for gas. That was literally what the political ads used to be. Now it's Donald Trump wants to kidnap your women, make them wear red dresses, and chain them in the bedroom.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris wants to throw babies out of a window. That's what political ads have become, and it's friggin' ridiculous.
It is. You and I are referred to as by the Democratic Party as extremists. We are extremists because
look, I'm already on an actual extremist watch list because the German government thinks I'm a threat. Well, that's fine.
Well,
I don't care. I don't have any plans to go to Germany anyway. And I'm pretty sure I'm on a couple of lists here too, because
you're on my list.
Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I be? If the German government has me on a list, I'm pretty sure they've said, "Hey, Americans, you know this guy." So I don't care though. It's not what that's not the point of what we're talking about. But you're dead on. You are dead on with the differences in the political ads. Now
it's crazy.
It's nuts.
No,
I remember seeing. Oh, dude, it was even with like I think the earliest ads that I remember were probably for the Clinton campaign.
Yeah.
When he was running for office.
Yeah.
And I remember I didn't understand a damn thing they were talking about. It was like, national debt and fiscal this and debt ceiling this and trade policy this and proposition this. I'm like, I got no idea what those words mean. I'm a child. Now, political ad. Do you really want your daughters having to fight in a war just to be able to kill their children? We've got the movie trailer guy. What was his name? John. What was it? Lee Fontaine was his name. He passed away back in 2008. He had a great voice.
Oh yeah.
But no, that's what political ads have become. Nobody, look, we're going to have to sacrifice. Hey, you know what? This guy doesn't want to kill babies. He wants to make killing babies completely illegal, but he wants to raise gas prices to $8. Well, I guess I'm going to have to pay $8 a gallon for gas because I don't know. I mean, that's what we're going to have to compromise on now because that's what they're basing platforms on now. And it's friggin' ridiculous.
It is. It is. I don't know. Crazy times. That's all I can tell you.
Oh, dude. It is. Man, we got really going with this one. We're already 3 minutes to the end of the show. But dude, you made excellent points there.
I appreciate that. As did you.
It's super rare, but you did it.
Well, as we mentioned earlier, I did have my morning nap. So I was a bit more lucid.
You did have your morning nap. Yeah. You found an expired bag of Geritol under your couch cushions.
So I'm regular. I'm ready to go. It's
yes, sir.
It's good. No, it's listen, dude. It's people say it all the time, but listen, being an old person, and I've been there. I can tell you, life was easier 30, 40 years ago because I was already an adult then, and I know that things literally were black and white. Things were right or wrong. That is the truth. It's not all this weird gray areas and fuzziness.
Whose truth? Your truth?
God's truth. God's truth, buddy.
Because that's truth.
The one and only truth. Did relativism exist? Obviously it did. I knew plenty of hippies.
But we put those people in asylums.
Exactly. And we got to open his asylums back up. There's a couple of abandoned ones here in Jersey.
We've got the space because there's so many abandoned textile mills around here. We can just turn it back into state-run asylums. There's even privately funded asylums. We got to do something.
Not too far from where I'm at. There's it turned out to be an asylum, but it started out as it was actually the hospital that the vast majority of Union soldiers would wind up in if they were severely injured and had to be removed from the battlefield and sent away somewhere. There was this massive hospital in West Trenton, right along the Delaware River. It's still there, gorgeous buildings. But after the Civil War, it became an insane asylum, and it was that way for up until probably 20 years ago. And now parts of it are open, and they still use it as it's a mental facility, but lots of it are closed. But it's supposed to be very, very haunted. It's been on a number of TV stuff, but
let's definitely reopen those back up.
Open them up, baby. I'm telling you.
So, what's the moral of the story for today? They're going to keep coming. They're going to keep coming for Catholics.
Yeah.
Morality shouldn't be something that ends up on a ballot. It should be universally understood, whether you like it or not.
Correct.
If you don't agree with that, you're wrong. But we've got 10 seconds. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing and sharing this with your anti-Catholic friends.
God bless you, everybody.